Cheri Tyra was born to Kenneth and Karen on August 4, 1965. As a teenager, Cheri began hanging out with a bad crowd, which led to her dropping out of school at the age of 17. She would then struggle with drug addiction for the next few years before finally trying to get herself clean. In 1988, 22-year-old Cheri was working as a secretary at her father's metalworking business and had recently moved into an apartment in Tucson, Arizona. Even though she was trying to get her life clean, she still mainly hung around drug users and prostitutes and was known for using cocaine with them. Then, in May of that year, she unexpectedly quit her job, and 6 weeks later, she encountered evil. On July 2, 1988, teenagers out riding their ATVs discovered her nude body. She had sadly been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. 3 days before her body was found, she had visited 2 homes where acquaintances lived, looking to buy some weed. After striking out twice, a man she knew drove her to a 3rd home. After she went inside, he got scared and drove off. He was questioned after her death and ruled out as a suspect. 2 days later, on July 1st, she was seen leaving her home with a man described as good-looking and well-tanned with piercing eyes. He was estimated to be in his mid-30s, standing 5'9" and weighing between 160 to 180 pounds. He was stocky, clean-cut, and had light brown hair. They got into his gold Jeep pickup with a striped Serape draped across the bench seat and a white utility box behind the cab. They were allegedly going to buy drugs, but after leaving, she was never seen alive again. Investigators believe she might have ripped someone off for drugs or cash and was murdered because of it. A week before her death, a friend of hers brought a man over to her apartment after promising him sex with 2 women for $100. However, the girl stole his money and left, and Cheri refused to sleep with him. The man was questioned but provided a solid alibi. Thankfully, they do have biological DNA on file, which will hopefully be sent off for advanced DNA testing soon. Cheri was murdered in cold blood on July 1st, 1988, and as of October 2024, this case remains unsolved. Debra Ann Smith was born the youngest of 12. In 1996, 30-year-old Debra was the mother of 4, living in an apartment in downtown Leesville, South Carolina. She was also 8 months pregnant with her 5th child. On January 29, 1996, Debra left the kids at home at around 5:30 p.m. and told the neighbors she was heading out to meet someone and would be back later. However, after leaving, she was never seen alive again. Just a few hours later, 2 young brothers in the area of Lexington County on Bozard Mill Road found her body. She had been beaten and strangled to death, wrapped in a cloth, and left on the side of the road. Several days later, investigators discovered a red clutch purse near the crime scene and believed it would help solve the case, but it never did, and the case eventually went cold. It's theorized that the person who murdered her did it because of her unborn child. The Lexington County Sheriff says they've been close to a suspect, but never had enough evidence to make an arrest. Debra and her unborn child were murdered in 1996, and as of October 2024, this case remains unsolved. James Donald Lusher Jr. was born with special needs on October 15, 1976, and went by Jamie. In 1992, his parents divorced, and he went to live with his father. Unfortunately, their relationship was not great, and his father described him as a moody and immature teenager who hated school. In the fall of that year, 16-year-old Jamie strangely disappeared. On November 6, 1992, he planned to ride his gray and green Huffy mountain bike from his home to his grandmother's house in Blandford, Massachusetts, about 12 miles away. He was going with the purpose of watching a bicycle race. Sadly, after leaving, he never arrived and was never seen again. There was a possible sighting by a server at a Friendly's restaurant in Westfield. She said that 2 days after his family last saw him, on November 8th, he visited the restaurant. 3 days later, on November 11th, a hunter found Jamie's brand new bicycle abandoned near a pond in a wooded area of the city. He had only had the bike for about 3 weeks after receiving it for his birthday. The area was searched and the pond was drained, but no evidence of Jamie was found. One possible suspect in the case is child serial killer Louis S. Lent Jr., who was allegedly near Westfield around the time Jamie disappeared. He was arrested in January of 1994 for kidnapping and assaulting 12-year-old Rebecca Savarese. Thankfully, she was able to escape and alerted the police. During Lent's 3-day interrogation, he confessed to abducting Rebecca and to the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Sarah Ann Wood in Frankfort, New York. He drew them a map, but they were unable to locate Sarah's remains. He would later recant his statements, but was still convicted of her presumed murder. He also confessed to the murder of 12-year-old Jimmy Bernardo. Then, in July of 2013, Lent confessed to Jamie's murder and provided details of the crime.
Welcome to 22 News at 5. I'm Alicia Rodriguez. A major development today in a 21-year-old case. A serial killer has confessed to killing 16-year-old Jamie Lusher of Westfield. 22 News I-Team reporter Laura Hutchinson tells us why he confessed.
Well, according to Hampton County District Attorney Mark Mastriani, they had enough evidence to believe convicted serial killer Louis Lent was Lusher's killer. Now, when they got to that point, Mastriani says they offered if he'd give them good evidence that led them to Lusher's remains, he wouldn't be prosecuted in Hampton County for the murder. Lent apparently detailed the murder and told them they could find his remains in Greenwater Pond in Beckett.
They searched the 88-acre Greenwater Pond for 3 days, but nothing was ever found. Unfortunately, it seems that Lent has purposely given multiple conflicting accounts, and it's unclear if he was really involved in Jamie's disappearance and presumed murder. Jamie stood 5 foot 2 inches and had brown hair. He was kidnapped and likely killed in November 1992, and as of October 2024, he has never been found, and this case remains unsolved. In 1990, 15-year-old Rosetta Jean-Baptiste, a native of Haiti, fled to the United States with her parents, Eve and Maurice, and 2 sisters. 3 years later, in 1993, 18-year-old Rosetta was in her junior year of Ramapo High School and living in Spring Valley, New York. She was described as a quiet and timid individual who never got into trouble and was always very mild-mannered. On December 9, 1993, she strangely failed to return home from school. By the following day, when there was still no sign of her, her father reported her missing. On the morning of December 11, 1993, a housekeeper at the Maple Shade Motel in Ramsey, New Jersey, entered room number 2 and found her partially nude body in the shower. The medical examiner determined she had been strangled to death and had been dead anywhere from 4 to 7 hours before being found. She was also 9 months pregnant, information that shocked her family, who had no idea. She was seen with an unidentified man checking into the motel around 7 p.m. on the day her father reported her missing. The man was described as a stocky, light-skinned black man, 30 to 40 years of age, and 5'8" to 5'9" inches tall, roughly 200 to 220 pounds. A few years ago, an age progression photo of the suspect was created in case someone could recognize him. Sadly, Rosetta was murdered on December 9, 1993, and as of October 2024, this case remains unsolved.
He said, "Ma, I love you," and I said, "I love you too," and that's the last things we said.
Warren Portis was born on January 30th, 1986, to Crystal Warren. In 2014, 28-year-old Warren was now a father to a young daughter living in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He was described as a loving and doting father who was also very down-to-earth and friendly. On the night of March 15, 2014, Warren and a friend were heading back to their vehicles after hanging out in downtown Greensboro when they encountered evil. As they were walking on Friendly Avenue near the West Market United Methodist Church at around 2:30 in the morning, 3 to 4 men jumped out of a car and attacked them. After the suspects fled, Warren was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced brain dead. Investigators determined that one of the attackers hit him in the head with a brick.
Some people hit him from behind. And what I went on, his friends say he did take out running, but he came back to grab him because he was on the ground. Whatever they hit him with, from the back, it fractured his skull and he got brain dead.
As for his friend, he thankfully survived. The attack was caught on surveillance, and investigators could see a dark minivan parked on Friendly Avenue and a silver 4-door Nissan car pulling around it and driving off. They believe the people in the van witnessed the attack, but they've never been located. That weekend in town was the ACC basketball tournament. However, it's unclear what, if anything, provoked the brutal beatings. Warren was murdered on March 16, 2014, and as of October 2024, no arrests have been made, and this case remains unsolved. I had previously covered the case of Amber Nicole Spradlin, who was found dead inside the home of Dr. Michael McKinney, and I want to provide an update. But first, I'm going to give a quick recap of the story. Dr. McKinney was a local dentist who owned the Brick House restaurant where Amber worked. On June 17, 2023, after her shift ended at the restaurant, she ended up at McKinney's home, along with her friend Roy Kidd, McKinney's son MK, and his friends Josh Mullins and his girlfriend Lauren. 911 was called twice that night. The first call was to report that one of the men in the home was drunk and bleeding after getting into a fight. However, during that call, someone grabbed the phone and told the dispatcher they had it under control and didn't need emergency services. A few hours later, McKinney called 911 to report that he found Amber's body and believed she had been murdered. Strangely, before he called 911, he called 2 prominent figures in Floyd County, Kentucky. One of the calls was placed to the county attorney, who advised him a few days later to hire a lawyer. The other was to the Prestonsburg City Police Chief, who abruptly resigned. Investigators found that the crime scene had been extensively tampered with before the last 911 call was made. Due to the enormous amount of blood evidence recovered throughout parts of the home, crime lab processing took a very long time. She had been stabbed in multiple areas around her face at least 11 times. It was so severe that it broke the tip of the blade off. After I featured the case, about a year after the horrible tragedy, MK was arrested and charged with Amber's murder, while Dr. McKinney and MK's friend, Josh Mullins, were arrested and charged with 7 counts of complicity to tamper with physical evidence. All 3 pleaded not guilty.
Hope you like it, Big Bubba. You gonna get what's coming to you. You son of a bitch.
Dr. McKinney, this is WLEX. Is there anything you have to say about being indicted by a grand jury just a little while ago? You're not getting out of this, buddy. You're not above the law. Dr. McKinney, is there anything you'd like to say? That's what I think. I don't know.
MK and McKinney were able to bail out, even though MK's bail was set at $5 million. McKinney then returned to work at his dental business, Floyd County Smiles. During a 95-minute interview, Amber's friend, Roy Kidd, told the events of the night. He said that on the night of the murder, Amber talked him into going to Seasons Inn with her and Dr. McKinney. She even went and picked him up. He said he drank 4 cans of beer before she arrived and then drank mixed drinks at the bar before going to McKinney's home. In total, he had about 10 to 14 drinks before the night was over. After the bar closed, Amber, Roy, and Dr. McKinney continued drinking with the staff for a couple of hours. They then got into McKinney's Ford Bronco and went to his house and continued drinking at the bar in the basement. I originally said that 911 was called because of a fight, but apparently that call was made by MK, who wanted Roy removed from the home. Dr. McKinney was the one who grabbed the phone and told the dispatcher it wasn't necessary. Roy said he went to bed sometime between 6 and 6:30 a.m., and that was the last time he saw Amber alive, standing by the bar with the McKinneys, Josh, and Lauren. He said he woke up sometime between 9 and 11 a.m. because he had soiled himself. When he walked into the living room, he could see Amber from behind sitting on the couch. Thinking she was awake, he walked around to her front side and shockingly discovered her dead and covered in blood, which had saturated the couch. However, he believed she had died from a stroke or hemorrhage because he couldn't see any wounds on her. He didn't know she was murdered until police arrived and told him. He then went and pounded on Dr. McKinney's door, which was about 10 feet away, and told him that Amber was dead from natural causes. McKinney then got on the phone and made the call to a couple of different people before finally calling 911. Roy said he couldn't hear what was being said on any of the calls. At that point, Josh and Lauren had come up the stairs from their basement bedroom. Roy then asked Dr. McKinney where MK was, and he was told he had left sometime during the night. Roy then went into the dining room and waited alone until the police arrived. Roy was questioned extensively, but ultimately ruled out as having anything to do with her death. He did say, however, that when he told Dr. McKinney about Amber, he didn't even walk out to check on her and immediately started making phone calls. When the dispatcher answered, he said, and I quote, "I've got a murdered girl in my house." Dr. McKinney was later asked by investigators how he knew she was murdered instead of natural causes, as Roy told him, and he had no answer for that. He was also asked why he didn't check on her himself, and once again, he had no answer. It was allegedly discovered at the scene that McKinney, MK, and Josh planted a knife in the couch where Amber was found, but it wasn't the knife used in the crime. At this time, the details behind the murder and the motive remain unclear, and the men are expected to return to court for pretrial on October 24, 2024.